You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. If you've driven from Seattle to Mount Rainier this summer, you might have had to find a different route from normal, one that misses the town of Wilkeson. Since April, this rural Pierce County town of just under 500 people has been cut off from a major source of economic activity through traffic due to the closure of the Fairfax Bridge a few months ago. And to add insult to injury, another bridge into town is now also closed. The White River Bridge was blocked off following a crash involving a semi-truck. That has eliminated a vital connection between Buckley and Enumclaw, and Wilkeson Councilmember Jayme Peloli says her town is suffering as a result. She's been calling for Washington's Governor Bob Ferguson to declare an emergency in order to seek federal dollars to help fund the effort to fix these bridges. And yesterday, he did just that for the White River Bridge closure. Peloli says she's grateful and optimistic, but there's more work to do related to the Fairfax Bridge, and an emergency proclamation won't be coming for that crossing.
Yesterday morning, I received a call from Governor Bob Ferguson himself, and he called me before the emergency proclamation for the White River Bridge came out and was issued. He wanted to let me know that he did declare that an emergency. He also wanted to talk to me about just what he had seen about Wilkeson's fight, and that he wanted me to know he had been in multiple conversations and meetings. Again, this is the first time that I've heard and directly from him that he was briefed on all the things that were happening. So he knew that I had called for an entire corridor for an emergency. The governor explained that the Fairfax Bridge doesn't qualify for an emergency declaration under current rules because its closure was caused by long-term neglect rather than a sudden disaster or a third-party strike. So he acknowledged the devastating impact that it had on Wilkeson and how it's cut off all of our cars and how that's really left us in shambles, essentially. And so I did urge him at that point, was able to have a conversation for him to take immediate action through strategic reserve funding. That is an opportunity to keep our businesses alive and to show our community that we are still standing and we want to remain that way, and we need that support very quickly.
So can you tell us just first a little bit about the town of Wilkeson and what summer is typically like when people can actually drive on the highway through town?
Yeah, I'd love to. Wilkeson is a very small historic town in Pierce County, Washington. It's located about 20 miles southeast of Tacoma. The town sits at the gateway of Mount Rainier National Park's Carbon River entrance. Our population is just under 500 residents, making it one of the smallest incorporated towns in the state. The character of Wilkeson is it has a strong sense of heritage and just such a small town identity. So it is known for its historic downtown, our Wilkeson handcar races, and then surrounded by a lot of different hiking and biking trails. And that mountain is definitely the biggest piece of what makes us very unique.
And typically people would be driving on Highway 165 and stop off in Wilkeson, I imagine, for food, outdoor gear, things like that. Like this is usually the boom time, I would guess.
Yeah, May through October is considered our peak season. And during that time, we have 1,000 cars a day that would go over that Fairfax Bridge. So it's a huge impact when that bridge is closed and there is no further access to it.
So the Fairfax Bridge closed earlier this year. Now the White River Bridge also shut down. What is going on in town?
Yeah, so like you said, it's not only the Fairfax Bridge. The White River Bridge is closed. We have actually a temporary bridge that's just before you get to Buckley that was 5 years ago and still has not been replaced. And then beyond the White River Bridge is the Green River Bridge, is down to one lane. So our region is surrounded by failing bridges, and families and businesses are definitely paying the price every single day for the infrastructure here.
There are two groups that I understand are affected. So town residents are affected because they're cut off in Wilkeson, but then there are people in Fairfax across the bridge too. Could you tell me a little bit of the different challenges that people are facing right now with so little access?
Yeah, the Fairfax Bridge was really the only safe, reliable access point for dozens of families, 35 plus residents on the other side. And with the closure, they are they have an access road, but emergency crews, it takes 10 to 15 minutes to get to that gate access, another 40 to 60 minutes, depending on where the resident lives, to reach them. To make that much worse, there is no reliable 911 service. So if you can actually call 911 and they get to you, it is an insanely large amount of time before that gap is closed. And they're right now literally relying on radios and air horns to call for help for their neighbors and with themselves. Their groceries, propane surcharges. I mean, everything you can think of has been gone up in price just because of this bridge closure for them. And then,
This is the
it has
people who are
just,
in Fairfax who are like
these are the
across the
residents
bridge.
that
Yeah.
live across the bridge. Yes.
Wow. And I understand
Yeah.
that there's been like emergency defibrillators that have been delivered because of this.
AEDs, before the bridge completely closed off, they knew a year ahead of time when they lowered the tonnage capacity on that bridge that eventually they were probably going to close it, is my assumption. And so a whole different entity got in touch with those residents and said, let's get you some AEDs. I know specifically there's one family that has had heart conditions, and that AED sits on her front porch. And people know that's where one of them lies. And if something happens, they can utilize that.
Wow. How are businesses doing? I mean, can they survive this in Wilkeson?
No, they can't survive it. And it's just not Wilkeson. Buckley's affected by it. South Prairie has a gas station. Burnett has a gas station that's completely dwindled down to just local residents, and there are not that many. I had one approach me just this week saying they're week to week on if they can stay open. And it's a significant place. And if we lose that closure, our town will take a massive hit.
Given that the governor's effort yesterday addresses the White River Bridge, not the Fairfax Bridge, what are your next steps and immediate priorities here?
Right now, it is that emergency support to those Fairfax residents. They're going to bring in Pierce County Sheriff and start to work with them and start to get some support on that road to make sure that the right people are on that road and those privileges aren't being abused. We want to get a slush fund together for those residents. The incorrect process was in place, it seems like, to be able to reimburse for popped car tires and issues driving up and down that road due to no fault of their own. So creating funding quick and relief for them is very important. Second is our businesses. I need that strategic reserve funding very quickly to make sure that we have an influx of revenue coming in for our economic support and development. And then the next biggest thing is, getting back to the mountain. How does that look? There are some things in place and some opportunities for the Wilkeson Historical District to jump in and start to become a big partner with the town and find ways that we can support gaining back that base of people that really wanted to come up and see the town and be supportive of us.
I know, council member, that you're a fifth generation resident of Wilkeson. Conditions seem to be getting tough for folks who are there. I mean, why do you stay in Wilkeson? Why is it important for Wilkeson to come together as a community right now and fight for its survival?
Yeah, I'm not only a council member here, I have a home here. I bought a commercial building in 2023 to renovate it, to give back to the town, to create a shuttle system up to the mountain and an Airbnb and a vacation rental. And so I believe in the town. I believe in my ability to get us where we need to go amongst everyone else that's raising their hand and stepping in and supporting. I do feel like we're going to have some relief soon. There's a ton of grants we've applied for. We're really close on one to secure some property in town. We should know this week about that. We've got some great partners. There are some that aren't stepping up, but there are some that are, and that's huge. It's a big piece for who, wants to get on board with us and see us thrive. And so we do have some things down the pipeline that are coming that are outside of the government's control that we can do ourselves. And so yes, we are asking for help from them, but we are not sitting around waiting for that. We know that there are other things we need to be looking at and ways around. And so we are getting in front of those. And, I can't speak for these other communities, but it is very clear that the plateau itself, right, from here to Maple Valley to Buckley to Enumclaw, this is a middle of a major infrastructure emergency. And so these temporary bridges, right, the whole system is on the brink. This moment in general really demands an intervention, no piecemeal fixes. And I believe Wilkeson, we're up here because we love the small town community. We love the ability to have a town hall at the local school and have everyone come and talk about how we're going to make it through. So I believe everybody is here for a reason. I've never wanted to leave. Wilkeson is my religion. I'm ingrained into the DNA here. My family's been here so long, and they've always, even when mining left town, my great grandparents who owned the same store I purchased in 2023, they owned it for 50 plus years. When mining left, no one could afford groceries and they had a cash market, and they let people just charge on their account until they could find work, until they could repay them. I've heard story after story of how they supported the town. And so I feel like this is the same opportunity for me to come forward and just be a voice and to keep pushing forward until they find a solution. And
That was Wilkeson Councilmember Jayme Peloli, who was discussing the 2 closed bridges in her community. We spoke with her yesterday, and she responded to yesterday's emergency declaration as well for the White River Bridge, which helps communities seek federal dollars to fund repairs. The struggle continues to find funding for that smaller Fairfax Bridge. By the way, the Seattle Times reports Washington State's Department of Transportation expects the White River Bridge to be ready to reopen by the end of September, but only to alternating traffic. Can the tall trucks around here just really please watch out for the bridges? That would be excellent going forward. Thanks for listening to Soundside. This show is only possible because listeners support us. If you're able to give right now, please check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.